and welcome back to the Dreamcast. I am your host, Denise Walsh. I combine science, scripture, and stories that will inspire you to dive deep, break through your own personal glass ceiling, and design a life of your dreams. Dreamcasters, I am so excited to personally invite you to my first live event of 2019. Save the date for Dream Space, January 13th in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You are invited. I would love to have you join us. Not only will you hear from myself and other special guests, but you'll have space to dream, space to heal, space to break through your own personal glass ceiling. Connect with what it is you truly want most. Connect with your life's purpose and then create an inspired action plan so you can start taking steps in that direction. We're going to end the night with a come as you will be party. This means that we're pretending like it is the year 2024 and coming dressed as the person that you want to be in 5 years. Oh my gosh, we're going to have lots of talk time to help you prepare for this event, but I know that this full day workshop experience is going to be life-changing for you, and I want you there. Space is limited and it will sell out. So go to dreamlifetoolkit.com to get your Dream Space ticket today. Big welcome back to the Dreamcast. In our next interview, our guest strives to help others balance the health, business, and lifestyle domains. He's a former USFS hotshot wildland firefighter. He's a self-obsessed mountain biker, road cyclist, skier, climber, just about anything and everything outside. He's a CrossFit trainer, coach, and all-around passionate outdoors enthusiast. And he thinks that his growth is due to his imperfect action. He's taken risks throughout his entire life and is committed to do so in life and business. And because of that, he's gained many lessons through past roles in corporate, big business, public service, and the health and fitness space and entrepreneurship. And I actually met him because I was a guest on his podcast, Live the Fuel. And you guys, his energy was contagious. I was like, we need to keep this conversation going because you can just feel that he's passionate about what he does and he wants to help anyone and everyone get to their own next level as he continues to get to his own. So big Dreamcast welcome to Scott Mulvaney.
Thanks for bringing me on.
Yay! I'm excited to connect with you again. I know we connected a few weeks ago on your show, and I thought I need to hear more about your story as well, because you've done just about anything and everything from being a firefighter to skydiving to starting businesses and growing them. But you really love balance and health in all areas of life. So before we jump into what you're doing now, I'd love to hear just a few bits and pieces on why you got interested in entrepreneurship to begin with.
Because I didn't pay attention to my father.
Okay. So he was a traditional guy?
Well, the funny thing is my father has been an entrepreneur his whole life. He's never worked for anybody else. I mean, unless you consider your customers who you work for. So I just saw the struggles of what we went through growing up, and I wanted nothing to do with it. So I chased the whole, maybe I'm supposed to go into the big business space and the corporate space. I grew up as a farm kid, so I didn't know any better. And I wanted to do everything different. So I thought that I knew what I was doing. And then I think it's funny, you fast forward, over 20 years later, and I'm now exploring the entrepreneurial space for the past few years. So clearly, maybe I should have paid a little more attention to my pops.
So he was a farmer, and his business was farming?
Initially, but then actually my grandfather, his father was a cattle broker. And along that journey, my father has basically been a cattle broker his whole life besides the farming. I mean, we didn't have a farm our whole lives, but it was most of my childhood. His primary income was obviously transporting people's livestock and brokering and in the cattle and the horse space and everything else. And him and my younger brother still have their own businesses in that to this day. So.
Okay. Yeah. So interesting. And I really do think that sometimes we either are like, all right, I want to do it just like my parents, or the opposite, and we kind of swing the pendulum the other way. And you thought,
oh, I'm still pretty opposite.
Opposite of farming is big business, corporate world. So what did you do in the corporate world first?
The funny thing was, in high school, which I recommend, by the way, nowadays, anybody listen to this, is go to a technical school while you're in high school like I did. So I actually studied microelectronics technology at a vocational school while going to high school. So I actually got into working for a company in my senior year of high school to get a little taste of it. And then I saw the potential, right? I saw this tuition reimbursement thing and this whole, like, oh, you don't have to pay for everything yourself if you're good. So I was like, oh, maybe I need to chase this big business stuff. So yeah, I got into telecommunications actually. So the call center world, there was a startup company here in Pennsylvania that I got involved with. And that company still exists to this day. I think they've changed their company name a couple of times, but they have call centers all over the world now, in the Philippines and everything else. But when I worked there in the late 90s, it was, oh my God, I think I helped open a call center in Connecticut and Riverside, California. So nothing overseas, but I was also like 19 and working for the president of the company, and he thought I was 21. So he had no idea.
Most 19-year-olds are not thinking business decisions. They're not thinking training older adults. I'm sure when you were opening these call centers, you were working with people older than you and having to be kind of the leader in that situation, which is unique for a 19-year-old, who's freshman in college, partying every weekend. So
that's what I should have been doing, but I was not. Yeah.
Well,
all of my friends were partying.
Yeah. Well, and I think that just kind of we always say the 1% shift, the 1% change. And at 19, you were doing different things than other 19-year-olds. And that's that 1% little shift that kind of takes you in a different direction. What did you end up doing after that?
Oh gosh, after that, I've worn many hats over the years. So let's see. I got left there in the end of 99. Then I thought I'd move to South Carolina, and I was going to get back into that space again, but this time with nowadays it's called Verizon. Back then it was Bell Atlantic Mobile, and they were just becoming Verizon. And then I realized the South was a little too slow for me. I just did not click very well at the time at my age. So I moved back north and then got involved with a company here called OmniPoint, which then got acquired and rebranded years later as VoiceStream. And then it became T-Mobile to this day. So T-Mobile USA, I was in that world before T-Mobile existed. And then I worked my way up as a guy answering phone calls and customer service to becoming one of their management and coach. I was coaching and developing, managing 30-person teams. And I travel around to some of our outsourcing call centers. Once I became a business analyst, I was working for the headquarters out in the Seattle, Washington, and all this without a degree, by the way.
Okay. So how long were you in the corporate world before you decided to start your own business?
Ooh, well, the shift in the dream, so to speak, would have happened when I decided to go back to school. And I decided I want to be the first person in my family to have a degree. So on nights and weekends, I was taking accelerated learning courses at some local universities to accelerate that timeline. So I was still at T-Mobile. Then banged out a bunch of classes, did some tuition reimbursement, racked up some of my own college debt as an adult. That was the end of my 20s. And then realized I didn't like it anymore. Got into the IT space, worked for a startup IT company for a couple of years, then got tired of that, then got into finance, had my federal licenses in selling insurance and retirement for small businesses with a big company called ADP, who does a lot of companies' payroll. And then finally set the goal to finish my degree, and I left it all behind and became a wildland firefighter.
Oh my gosh, you really have worn a lot of hats. What was your degree in?
Marketing. And actually, if I would have waited 2 more semesters, it would have been a dual major of marketing and psychology. But my professors were like, listen, Scott, number one, you're already an adult. You already have a resume. You already have careers in motion. Do you really need to wait longer and get the dual major? Are you going to go for a PhD in psychology? And I was like, no. They said, then just graduate now. And I'm like, you know what? That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah.
So I'm a geek about psychology and marketing. So
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, they really do go hand in hand, like how to get in people's heads to take them in a direction.
Yeah. And just really understand more about human behavior, but also it's tied perfectly into the past 2+ years of the podcast and helping understand the importance of mindset with everything we do,
So tell me, what was the importance of you being the first one in your family to have a degree?
It's from, I'll rack it up to some old school thought, because nowadays I actually have no problem telling people don't do what I did, because I still thought, maybe the degree is holding me back. Right. And because I was in the traditional business space. And I said, oh, well, I mean, if I want to move up and get the even bigger salaries, I should go back to school. And I wanted to set a good example. I had a nephew that was growing up, my sister's son. I was like, you know what, let's set the example. That kid's a smart kid, man. He's got to have somebody in the family to look up to. No offense to the rest of my family. I just, for some reason, that's what was in my head at the time. And and plus I just love big, hairy, audacious goals is the saying, right? So I wanted to have a little bag on there. So I went for it. I just wanted to just set a good example and show that, hey, a farm kid can do whatever he wants. So then I think it's funny though, obviously, that I left that all behind.
I know the psychology of ourselves. Like it is interesting when you think of, did you really need to do that? But your point at that time, you did, like as an identity shift. I was a psychologist for several years and I worked with several kids from the ages 14 to 18. They were the first one in their family to graduate high school. And it was a huge, huge deal for them to have that on their, just in part as a part of their identity, you know?
Yeah, I'd back you up on that. There's probably some personal stuff in there too. Like, hey, I like setting goals and, you know, I want to show everybody that I didn't just have, like people didn't understand what I did because I was making more money than my friends coming out of college. And like, I don't understand what you do because you make more than I do and I have my degree. Because again, people think that you had to have a degree to make a lot of money. And I'm like, number one, if money is your goal, but number two, again, fast forward to today, I know a lot different. Like guys, like you don't need a degree to kick butt and launch a successful business. And you just need to understand things at a much deeper level. But the degree did well around me. I did appreciate being reminded about the importance of studying and learning to, and really just learning in general. I do still give props to that process. But in the end, traditional education is still blatant memorization. And I use none of it in my business today.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. We used to say it's the best debt to have. And now we're like, no, it's not.
Yeah. But with your background, you get that. I mean, honestly, I do still reinforce that education makes perfect sense. The traditional university route makes sense for like my fiance. She's a doctor of equine veterinary medicine. So anything medically related, I'm like, you better know some things.
Yeah, you better study. And you can't learn that on YouTube.
No, YouTube University is not going to help you become a very successful veterinary doctor. Sorry. Yeah. There's limits to YouTube, ladies and gentlemen.
So you started the shift, you started the pivot, you started the dream, you got your degree, and then tell me about launching your business. When did that dream start?
Well, obviously I took the 2-year break, gave everything away, fit my life in a car, became the hotshot wildland firefighter for 2 years, served in public service, fought wildfires all over the West, realized that was not my long-term goal, at 32, and decided to move to Colorado, tried getting back into the traditional, job market, jobby job. And I have a spreadsheet to this day that shows over 200 jobs that I applied to in 2012 to 2013. And it was brutal. Colorado, man, it's full of people like me. They're just crazy outdoorsy nuts. They move there and it's just saturated with great talent. So it's very aggressive. You better have a job lined up or a career lined up or you have a business in motion if you're going to move there. So I just want to kind of throw that in there real quick. But then a friend of mine needed help growing her new business. And she's like, hey, can I convince you to come back to Pennsylvania? I was best friends with her husband. That's what brought me back to the East Coast. And the funny thing is I used to work for her, but now she's my client. So because I have my own business. So I was doing sales for her and growing her sales and marketing rep firm. And then I decided to ixnay that and then came back in as a consultant. So that's one of the trigger points I can actually thank, that friendship and the work I did with her to kind of kickstart me and say, you know what? I don't like having a boss. I think it's time to figure out this entrepreneurship thing. So yeah, that would have been probably the 2014 to 2014 was the big shift here. So
what I hear you saying is there was a lot of pivots, a lot of changes, a lot of, all right, what's next? What's next? I mean, job changes, moves, that kind of thing.
Oh yeah.
When you went to go do the fireman route, what was the pivot there? What was your thought process when you're like, all right, I need to do something different? How did that happen?
Why I became a hotshot?
How did that happen?
There's been a lot of explanations on that. And I've been actually working on that right now because I'm actually writing a book. And this is a big part of the book. And it's, I just did everything that I thought we were supposed to do. I chased the corporate dreams. I was chasing the dollars, which is not the answer, ladies and gentlemen, in life. The money will come if you're doing things you enjoy doing. I truly believe in that. And I just realized, like, you know what? I got a great resume. I look great on LinkedIn. I've been on LinkedIn since it was founded. I now have a degree. So, like, what the heck? Let's take a risk. And while I was finishing my degree on nights and weekends and still working in the corporate space, I found a fire academy in New York that could get me certified as a federal wildland firefighter. And then I started doing my business thing. I pulled the professor, I don't think they called them professors, the instructor aside. And I said, listen, everything I found out about wildland firefighting sounds amazing. But this whole hotshot thing, these guys are the elite, right? And he said, yeah. I was like, okay, I'm only going to do this if I could be a hotshot. And he just looked at me and just laughed. He's like, you have no firefighting background. You think you're going to get on a hotshot crew? And I say, if I'm going to do this, I need to have the hardest job possible. That's just the way I'm wired. I was like, I want the hardest job. I was like, by the way, also, where's the hardest area? He's like, the region 3. I'm like, what's region 3? Region 3 is Arizona, New Mexico. He's like, you go there and you fight wildfires. That's one of the hardest areas that hotshots serve. I'm like, sounds good.
Okay. For those that don't know, tell us what a hotshot is.
So most people who live in any towns, villages, cities, etc., you're used to your traditional city firefighter. Okay, highly respect that career. You can actually, if you work for cities, usually are a government employee. You have pensions and all this wonderful stuff. Wildland firefighting is different. You don't wear air masks. You can grow a beard because you don't have to worry about the air mask. You don't carry around an air tank on your back. You're carrying around a backpack full of MREs and your snacks and water, and you hike in the mountains. You don't shower for sometimes a week or two, and you fight wildfires at Mother Nature. So it's a different lifestyle. Hotshots, along with smoke jumpers, which are the ones who skydive in, these are like, according to the movie that came out last year, they call us the Navy SEALs of wildland firefighting. There's only 100 hotshot crews, about 100, 105 hotshot crews in the nation. But basically, we're trained very militaristically, and they send you in to the hard stuff. We'll just leave it at that.
Okay. And there's something about your personality that says, I'm not going to be a wallflower, even as a wildland firefighter. Wildland firefighter. Yeah. You're not going to just take the easy route and do something local. You want the hardest thing.
Yeah. That's kind of where my brain was at. I was like, if I'm going to take this huge risk, like what if, my thing was this, what if this is what I'm meant to do? Like, what if I do this and I fall in love with it? So I was like, let's take the hardest possible job possible. If I get it, great. And then I can see if this is what I'm meant to do. And I honor this position. I respect this position. I run charity events to this day that benefit fallen firefighters. And it truly created a shift for me. Back to your point on the why was, corporate space never taught me about brotherhood, sisterhood, this bond that first responders and people who serve in public service have. Police, fire, paramedics, military, they all have this weird bond. Like when I talk about it, like right now, my hair stands up on my arms. Like it's just to this day. And I was like, I need to see what that's all about. I needed to experience that. I didn't have that in the corporate space. Everybody, it was all cutthroat. People would step on you just to get your job. Didn't matter. So. Did
you know anybody who was a wildland firefighter?
Up until that, no. I discovered it thanks to a short-term romance.
Okay. there's a reason for everything, right?
There's always a little love story somewhere in the story. But yeah, I had briefly hung out with this girl here in Pennsylvania. She was moving back to Nevada. And I've never met a girl anything like her because I'm an East Coaster. And she's from Nevada. And I was like, well, what are you moving back for? And she's like, oh, I'm going to go be a hotshot. I'm like, what the heck's a hotshot? And she's like, it's cool. Like she's like, you get the whole summer, you're in the mountains, you hike everywhere, you're fighting wildfires, and you can't spend your money because you're doing the job 16 hours a day on the fire line. So this is not a traditional 8-hour shift job, by the way. And she's like, you just bank your money up. And she's like, then I want to go pay for myself to put myself through massage school. She wanted to start her own massage therapy business. She loves healing people. And she did. And that impressed me. And it left a mark on me. Mm-hmm. So while I was finishing my degree on nights and weekends, I couldn't get that out of my head. And I just started Googling it all the time. Whenever I got distracted, I'm like, hotshot, Google, well, what else could I find? What else could I find?
That's cool. That's really cool. Well, and I have to say, I love, and I've never heard this, and I'm now going to adopt it, the mentality of what if this is what I meant to do?
Yeah.
Because I think so many times when people are taking a shift, they're pivoting in life. They don't know what to do next. They're asking, what should I do? And they're unsure. They're restless. They're double-minded, meaning they're like second guessing every decision. And they're asking the wrong question. Instead of saying, what if this is what I meant to do? And dive in 100%, like full on, no questions asked. a lot of times people, every step they take go, is this the right way? I'm not sure. And then you're not going anywhere. So what if this is what you're meant to do? Was that something you learned? Was that just something you cultivated?
Cultivated. It just popped in my head one day. I just said, like, it made my stomach hurt. That's what it was. Like, there's your brain, there's your gut.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, in that career choice too, day in and day out, there's a chapter in my book. It's going to be called Situational Awareness. This was key to keep ourselves alive and keep our fellow firefighters alive. Is that our slogan was, you had to keep your SA up, meaning your situational awareness. That's what it stood for. And you let your SA drop. Next thing you know, you're falling off a cliff, or that tree that is on fire could fall and hit one of your crew members. Like it's always heads up, spinning around. You're so overly dialed in. It's mentally exhausting. But long story short, you have a great night of sleep every single night because you're just so exhausted physically and mentally. But back to the original drive, it was just, it was a gut. It just went deep. And I'm like, man, I kept saying, what if, what if, what if? And I had to keep reminding myself of that and override my logical thinking. Mm-hmm. My logical brain said, dude, you've already got everything in motion. I had colleagues. The founder of the IT company was a friend of mine that I was working for those 2 years. And he even said, he's like, Sky, he's like, you sure you want to do this, dude? Like, dude, you have all these years of sales and marketing. You've been a business coach. You've been a coach in the corporate space. He's like, now you have your degree. Like, now it's off to the races. And I was like, yeah, I can do that too in 2 years. So what if? Because I can always come back. I already had everything laid out. So that's why I did it.
Ah, that's so good. And so many times we let our brain win and our gut's telling us something different. And when you say yes to that intuition or to your gut, I feel like that's when the most amazing experiences happen.
Oh, it was explosive. I still to this day remember that because, I already had a few things here and there over the years that would kind of give you a little bit of that. But like, this was the first one where it's like, whoa, like I was high. I was like, what if? I mean, FYI, I never did a drug before when that moment happened. Like, I was just like, what if? I was like, dude, this is like, I just got excited and I got fired up. And that's why I was like, all right, it's on. Like, we got to go for this. Like, everybody's saying no and I'm saying yes.
Yeah. Well, and you can't, I mean, it's like the alternative of not listening to your gut when you feel such a pull in a direction. It feels like you're dying. You're like, the alternative is not acceptable.
Well, and the best part was, here's the funniest thing ever, by the way. Just to fast forward, we'll connect deeper into that if you want. But it's like, okay, to this day, what do I do now? Like, one of my taglines is control how you exist online. So I help people grow their brands because I have the marketing background, the degree, right? But even though what I'm using now in my business, I've had to self-learn everything, just like I had to self-learn firefighting. So the point here is that I started I would disappear in the woods, go fight some fires, take a bunch of photographs. And then when I come back, I launched my Facebook profile in 2007. So up from 2007 to 2009, it was barely a blip on the radar. And then I disappear for a month, fight fires, come back, post a bunch of photos, disappear again. And that was my life. And all of a sudden there was crazy interaction. People were like, what are you doing? Like, what happened to you? Where are you? What is this fire stuff? Those mountains are gorgeous. And like, everybody's just reacting to all this content. And the funny thing was, that's when I started geeking out about social media, watching the response. So now it's kind of funny how I did that just for fun. And now years later, I'm paid to do this for people.
Yeah. It's just, again, it's when you say yes to your gut, there's always a reason and one thing leads to another. And it may not make sense at the time, but it like all lines up.
Yeah. No, it just cracked me up. So you don't realize how things can become a full circle until they do. And then it's like, wow, that all these things do happen for a reason. You just haven't realized it yet. But you got to take the risk. This is the part of life. This is part of the entrepreneurial dream too. It's like, if you're not willing to take the risk, then you're not willing to be an entrepreneur. I'm not saying everybody has to be an entrepreneur. Some people are meant to be amazing career-minded, employees that lead companies. Let them do it. I just want nothing to do with it.
So you made the pivot. You said yes to your intuition, which you had done previously, and it always served you well. Were there any times when you were in the mud and you were just like, you maybe let fear take over, or it took you a while to actually listen to yourself or take a step forward, or is there a hard time?
I can give you professional examples, but I'll give you one of the fire examples. The superintendent who gave me a shot, I was considered an old guy. I was 31, by the way. But I'm like, really? I'm old? Because most of their employees that they hire are young, moldable, fresh out of college or high school football or whatever, right? And so it's like 18 to 24. So I'm literally, some guys call me the old guy on the crew. And I'm 31, mind you, at the time. I'm 41 as we're recording this, by the way. This is 10 years ago now. And anyway, the superintendent said, Scott, and this guy's name was Patrick Moore. And Pat, I met him at a second fire academy I went to in Colorado. So I went there on purpose to take more advanced courses so they could see that I was serious. I wanted to take courses that hotshots take, and I wanted to network. And that's how I met this guy. I met him at the fire academy. He was teaching ignitions. So here's one of the underlying little best practices. Go to where people are to connect with them if you want something. And he told me in the interview over lunch, he said, listen, he's like, you're not my normal candidate. He's like, yes, I'm impressed. You've run marathons and you're an endurance athlete. And you got this. He's like, honestly, your career just tells me you work hard. It has nothing to do with this career choice, though. He's like, you have no fire background. He's like, you're asking me to take a big risk. And he said, but he's like, I'm looking to rebuild this crew. So I need people with a leadership mindset that are still willing to follow because you're a rookie. But he said, if you give me 2 years, I'll consider giving you a shot. So I committed to that 2 years. And at the end of the first year is one of these pain points because there was a fire we were on. I didn't like some of the decisions that he made. And I'm a rookie, so I know I don't know everything. But I'm like, dude, you made me hike over this one ridge where no one else had to hike. It was even some of my brothers in the crew were like, dude, I can't believe he made you do that. There's a whole backstory behind this. Like I broke his little camp stove and I didn't know I broke it. And when I gave it back to him, I thought it worked and apparently it was broken. And he was questioning my integrity because I didn't tell him. And I'm like, I didn't know there was a problem. Anyway, so the next day he literally made me hike. It's totally militarized, right? Like you just make your rookie suffer. And I just didn't agree with it. I was like, this is a hard enough job as it is. We need to be as physically fit mentally and physically to stay alive day in and day out for your brothers. I just didn't understand why you would exhaust one of your top guys just because I broke your camp stove. But anyway, that's a whole different backstory. Point is, at the end of that season, I second-guessed going back for a second year. It really made my gut turn. And the only reason why I went back is because I was brought up by my father to be a man of your word. And I'm old school with some of this stuff. Like I still open the car door for my fiance, right? Like it's like chivalry, all this old school stuff that people call old school needs to be new school. It can't be old school. It's got to be new school. And one thing that no one can ever take you away from you is your word. And that's why I went back for the second year. But it was a tug of war because I was pissed. I did not like that guy.
Well, and it's really interesting that you mentioned this because you're in a leadership role, which means you're relying on your leaders and you are relaying information down. And at the core of the brotherhood is trust.
Yeah.
And if that trust has been broken, it sends waves all over the place. It
was a hard decision. So,
yeah.
But I said, I went back, I sucked it up, and the second year was awesome. And I got to do something that year that a normal rookie wouldn't be able to do. I was able to, towards the end of the fire season, they moved me out of the digging crew and up to the chainsaw operators. So the sawyers, what they're called, they go in first. You're the front. Every hotshot crew is a 20-man crew or 20 man or woman. Doesn't matter. There's women who do this, by the way. It's very impressive. These ladies kick some butt. But anyway, the sawyers always hike in first because they're cutting open the break. And the rest of the crew is the digging team, and they're digging the break. So that way, that's how you contain a fire. You don't put it out. You just put a big perimeter around it. It's like building a hiking trail around a giant wildfire. And then hopefully that slows it down and stops it, and you contain it. So anyway, the second year, I was actually put into a full-time role as a sawyer. So I was always in the lead 2 to 3 man groups that were going in first, and it was cool. It was something different. But to this day, I'm still obsessed with chainsaws. I have like 3 of them out in my garage. I take care of the local mountain biking park with other volunteers. I even rigged up a backpack system. So I actually mountain bike in with a chainsaw on my back. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I was like, hey, I'll never let it go. I grow people's brands online and on the internet space. And I just grew one of my clients from 3,000 to 10,000 followers on Instagram. We hit 10,000 on Sunday, and I was celebrating this. And my buddy's like, I show him that, and I text him. He's like, "Yeah, but don't you run a chainsaw?" I was like, "What does that have to do with it?" It's
both and, yes.
Yes, I click a keyboard on one hand, and I'm revving a chainsaw on the other hand, and that's my life balance.
Yeah. keeping all passions hot and active.
Yeah. I mean, I never expected to become that obsessed with it, but I haven't let it go in 10 years. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's transition to your marketing business, because you came back and you said, okay, that was awesome. And I went all in, and it was a big goal, and I did it, but something pulled you back home. So you went back home. Did you immediately start your business, or that's when you
No, I helped
went to
that friend of mine.
Colorado and you went to your friend? Okay.
Yeah,
So you had that transition space.
She brought me back into one of my natural skill sets that I always avoided, which was I have the gift of gab, and sales and marketing requires a gift of communication. And so I got to help her grow her sales firm, and which I still do to this day. And it reawakened marketing in me. But obviously I wanted to manifest that differently, fast forward to today in more of the digital space. Like, she has nothing to do with that. She's still a classic sales rep firm. I coach a couple of her employees and develop their sales techniques and everything else nowadays as a consulting relationship. But the core of, my business, Live the Fuel is a DBA of Fuel Enterprises. That's my LLC. And so I like the whole, fueling people's marketing online. That's why my tagline is control how you exist online, because nowadays anybody can slap up an Instagram page, a Facebook page, a Twitter profile, but nobody bothers to take the time to put together strategy. And it drives me crazy. So I was like, guys, before you take the action, at least slow down a little bit to put some type of strategy in place. Because I can't tell you how many times I come across people who are like, well, I put all this stuff up and it doesn't seem to really work. I'm like, well, yeah, what do you stand for? What do you care about? What is your brand embodying? How are you trying to change the world, right? Like, all of that goes in before you can even develop a strategy, which then those pages are supposed to help reinforce. So that gives you an example of what I care about.
Yeah, absolutely. So you meet with a client. Do you help them with that brand strategy, or do they come with you with a business?
I prefer to do that.
Okay, so you prefer to start from the beginning.
Yes and no. I also like cleaning up the mess. So
okay, so both and.
Because when I look at something, I'm like, well, have you ever thought about it this way? And they'll be like, no one ever brought that up before, but I like it. And I was like, okay, well, we could then, if you like that, then we could possibly work together. But I've also, there's an oncologist. I had him on the podcast show, very knowledgeable guy, fellow ketogenic lifestyle lover like me. We love our keto. And we started geeking out, and it turns out his wife is a health coach. I had no idea. And they have a blog together. And they contacted me a couple months ago, and they said, hey, we really love being on your show. You shared so much stuff. We're finally able to start doing something with this blog. They're like, how do I turn it into a brand? So that's an example of somebody I was recently helping, because he's a highly intelligent oncologist, cancer doctor, and she's a passionate health coach. And their blog content comes from both of them. He puts an article up, she puts an article. I think it's a beautiful balance of the medical world and health coaching, but they need to build a brand behind that now. So that's an example of somebody I was helping recently.
So if somebody wants to build a brand, what kind of questions would you ask them to hone them in on a specific focus?
Well, admittedly, there's a little form that I send all my new clients, and I make them go through a little bit of a brand discovery. It's actually really makes you think deep about what you care about most, what you want to embody. A lot of people forget that your brands are more than just money generators. Like, your brand is a piece of you. It doesn't have to be your name. Okay. Obviously I own ScottMulvaney.com, but that routes to LiveTheFuel.com. Until the book launches and I start building a possible author following, I don't need to create a separate site. I might always keep everything under LiveTheFuel.com. I haven't decided yet. I'm bored. But to your point is, people need to sometimes just pause and say, well, what do I want to stand for? What do I want to embody? And there's later exercises I put them through, okay, you could say, literally the one client said, oh, well, I'm thinking about a logo with black and gold. And you'll appreciate this, by the way, because I was like, oh, really? So have you ever read the psychology behind colors? And it was like a deer in the headlights. They looked at me like, there's psychology behind colors. I'm like, oh, yeah, there's an entire guide on it. Well, let me send it to you. And sure enough, after I sent them that, 2 weeks later on our next coaching call, they're like, yeah, so here's our new colors. We're thinking about a nice bright sky blue. And I was like, oh, wow. So no black and gold, huh? Okay. How do you go from black and gold to sky blue? Sometimes it takes something as simple as me just having them pause and say, what are you trying to symbolize? Black and gold are very bold, strong colors. And like gold is obviously a symbol of money as well. And if you're trying to go something more natural, more wellness, more touchy-feely, you might end up changing your color ideas. So it drives me crazy when people want a logo from day one.
Yeah, that's usually the first question. How do I get my logo? And you're like,
how do I get my logo? I'm like, what is your logo tied to? Like, I could tell you how many pieces. There's businesses who launch online and they don't have a logo. It's okay. As long as you have a clear, if you want to call it a mission statement or a purpose statement, and you've already got products that are able to be sold or services to be sold, then great. We can still launch a website. We don't need a logo. I mean, a logo comes later. What is that logo supposed to be tied to? My logo is fire. All right. I have blue and white in my logo because if you've ever looked at the different levels of fire intensity, and if you ever geek out about science like I do and stars and all this other stuff, if you ever look at, do you remember science class where they talked about the life cycle of the sun? Mm-hmm. And as the sun gets older, it moves into a big red stage, and then it starts shrinking down and getting intenser, and it switches into a blue phase and a white phase. Now, granted, we look at the stars in the sky, and you just see white stars. But that's one reason why I went with white as for the color of my fire, because I want it to burn like white hot, blue hot. But white hot is most important to me because, yes, if you think of traditional fire, it's red, it's orange, it's yellow. Those are warming colors. No. I'm going white hot, baby. All right, we're going intense. So, but see, I could talk to that. There's meaning behind that.
Right. So, it's not just throwing something up. It's not. So when you're helping with the brand strategy, meaning the why behind the why, the why behind the what, like all of the layers of clarity, really, because if you just throw something up and pray that people get it, it doesn't always work that way. Now, do you, in terms of getting their message out, do you focus on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, all of it, Google? What's your main focus?
Yes and no. Okay. Okay. One, I'll give you what I did. Live the Fuel. I locked down Live the Fuel everywhere. Yeah. Because I call it your online real estate, right? So it's like, listen, I want to make sure my digital footprint is 100%. Now, nowadays, this is getting harder and harder for people, right? It gets harder and harder to ensure that your screen name, as it's called, is not taken by somebody else. Like maybe you can get it on Twitter and Facebook, but maybe somebody already has it for some strange reason on Instagram. I don't know. The point is that you might be able to do that, you might not. But one of my goals is I lock it all down. All right. That doesn't mean you need to use it all. You have to come back to your comfort level. It also comes back to what your business is or what your brand is going to be doing. Like sometimes people start something and it's not even a business yet. They're just trying to build the brand. In the beginning, Live the Fuel was not a business. It was, I launched a Facebook page with a ghetto looking image of a flame as my logo, my Facebook like page profile image. And I started pushing motivational and inspirational content. Because even since before firefighting, when I started making my pivots, as you called them earlier, and shifts, is because I started putting in the work. I was doing personal development, professional development. I became obsessed with it, and I am to this day. So that's why I started pushing content. I didn't have Instagram yet. I wasn't even using Twitter. I didn't know what the heck I was doing with all that stuff. And Twitter is still one of my weaker profiles because I just tweet stuff once in a while. It's not really a primary platform for me. I focus heavily for me on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook, but that's for me. Like when I do a podcast, like for you, when you were on my show, I record the video because YouTube is powerful for long form format. And the podcast world is shifting. So I started doing that a long time ago because I want to get ahead of the curve. That's why I care about YouTube, long form format. But if you and I were talking to somebody right now, a friend of yours, and they're building maybe they're going to be launching a cookbook in 2 years. Well, then whatever that brand's going to stand for, or maybe you're going to have multiple cookbooks, then great. Maybe your brand is your name because you're a chef or you're just a at-home guru when it comes to cooking. Then you're going to buy a nice camera and you're just going to start photographing all the food you make. Well, clearly, I'd be popping that bad boy on Instagram. Instagram is image heavy. Facebook's become a pay-to-play platform. You have to exist just from an SEO perspective. So my response to that is when you're in Instagram and you can set up other social media linked profiles, I would just set them all up. And then when you go to post, just swipe for Facebook and swipe to Twitter. And I just go ahead and duplicate. I just don't even care about Facebook right now. I post to it all the time because you have to. But to get anything significant out of it, it's a pay-to-play platform. Just going to throw that out there. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it is interesting to think, number one, what is your message? What do you stand for? Being clear about what that is. And then which platform are you focusing on? And then why? Like Instagram is image heavy. So if you have an image, if you're going to do that, we got to take good pictures. We got to be consistent in.
And they don't have to be professional photos. Let me clarify that. You can still do just good old fashioned iPhone photos. I do it all the time. Yeah. It just comes down to what you want to symbolize. But if you're going to be building content towards a professionally printed cookbook, then some of that beautiful imagery is going to have to start cycling into that feed because you're building the momentum to when the cookbook gets released. And these are basically going to become teaser images because that's part of your brand, if that makes any sense.
Now, do you teach much on engagement, or how do you build followers besides just posting?
Well, like for my client that I got to 10,000 this weekend, that's all been organic. We've never paid for one of them. I don't believe in that. That's all junk. I tell people all the time, it's not always about the quantity. It is about the engagement. You can have 500 followers, but if they're heavily engaged followers that are always commenting and engaging, and you are also commenting and engaging back to them, engagement's a two-way street. Then you might have just a very loyal following of 500 to 1,000 people, and there's nothing wrong with that. My client is trying to get a movie launch next year. So the more followers he has and the more traffic we can drive to, for example, watch the trailer for the movie on YouTube. Obviously, that's my goal. Every tweet, every Facebook from time to time, not every single one, but we're going to try and remind people, hey, every like fifth or sixth post, hey guys, don't forget about that movie coming out. Go watch that movie or something. But lately, we've been trying to get more people into his personal background. He's been around for over 50 years. So recently, we were posting some throwback pics of when he used to play football in high school and stuff like that. He found all these old photos and he photographed them with his iPhone. We've been getting crazy engagement out of that because he has such a loyal following from his podcast show and the book that he put out a few years ago. Now people are excited to see him on Instagram. It's a different demographic. But people never knew his background from years and years and years ago. So when he every once in a while we throw out an old school pic, people are like, what? I can't believe that's you, and you crazy engagement out of that. So it's okay to throw yourself off of your traditional brand from time to time if you're looking for some shock factor. So
yeah, it's interesting because not everything can be an action post. Can be a do this, buy this, watch this.
Definitely not. No, if you want to think about a very basic mathematic equation, and it changes from time to time, but I tell people every seventh post you can ask. It's the same thing with email marketing, right? Every seventh email, for example, ask. You're allowed to ask. Prior to that, no, you're building a relationship. You're building engagement. But if you post every single post with like, hey, swipe here to buy this, swipe here to download this, or every email you send your list is buy, you're going to crash and burn. Just throwing that out.
It really is. It is that psychology of being a friend, somebody you like, know, and trust. Yeah. Because they're going to be, when you mentioned the throwback pictures, they're excited about him. And because they're excited about him, they'll purchase whatever he gets, whatever he creates, whatever he comes out with next, because they like, know, and trust him. And he's kind of the person behind the brand, which then
his name is his brand. And he does have other companies now. He's got a coffee company. He's got a vitamin company. And those followings are very small compared to his name. So now we're doing cross-pollination back and forth, but only from time to time, like once or twice a week, we'll take something from his vitamin company or his coffee company and share that into his primary brand feed that's behind his name. But we're not drowning people in that. It's just a, reminder that, I do this, this, and this. Oh, don't forget about this. This is my other thing, right? Yeah. So we're not drowning people in that. So,
and that's where the strategy comes in, where you can take a look at your week or take a look at your month of what you're posting, what you're guiding people to, the journey you're putting out there. So that way, all right, every seventh post is an action post. We throw some lifestyle, some stories, some getting to know me type experiences in there, video, text, pictures, all of it. And it can be well-rounded because you've thought it through.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just posted this weekend. They unfortunately, him and his wife, unfortunately, lost one of their longtime dogs, had passed away. It's like 16 years old. It's like crazy. But so right away, they already had another dog. It was a Vizsla. Vizslas apparently are a very beautiful breed. And they're like, you know what? We're getting another dog right away. And they picked up a Vizsla puppy. We posted that thing. Less than 24 hours, already had 1,000 likes. There's already people commenting on it. Like, I can't wait to see the videos, start video of the dog running around. Like, people are asking, like, please post a video of your dog running around. Seriously? Okay. But he's got that kind of following. So we're going to work that.
Yeah.
And actually, we are going to launch a new Instagram feed for the dog.
Might as well. People are asking.
Well, because this Vizsla is specifically a show level dog. It's a puppy, but he said within a year the dog will be competing and being shown because that's the bloodline it came from. So I just jokingly said, well, we should launch an Instagram feed. Why? He's like, why? I was like, well, you're basically building that dog into a professional. And nowadays, literally, people do this. Like, people have Instagram feeds for their dogs. But I was like, then we'll have, they named the dog Bonzo. So I launched a feed called Bonzo the Vizsla. Because I actually launched a dog feed for our dog, Calvin the Coonhound. Because every once in a while, I'm pushing Calvin into my content because he's been through a lot the past 2 months. We helped him. He survived cancer. We almost lost him 2 weeks ago because of renal failure from the cancer. And now he's back and he's a tripod now. He's a 3-legged dog because we had to take his leg to get rid of the cancer. So again, I've had people ask me like, hey, how's Calvin doing? So I don't drown my feed with it, but I just say, let's start working that in from time to time. Like, people get to see what's behind Live the Fuel, what's behind Scott, now my fiance wants nothing to do with my feed. She doesn't want to be in my feed at all. but so Calvin gets in there now. But yeah, it's part of my life. It's part of my brand. So,
well, it's part of the authenticity. It's part of the reason why everybody loves reality TV is because they want to know the backstory and they want to really feel like they're getting to know you. So throwing those pieces in can make a big difference when you do have a product because they, again, feel like they're like no interest.
Well, I'm doing the same thing. I'm going back and finding some of my old firefighting photos, and I'm going to be turning them into quoted images. I'll be cycling that into some of my content throughout the rest of the year into next year because once I finish the book editing, I'm going to be self-publishing this book, and the book is going to be a for-purpose book. I'm actually going to be donating proceeds to fallen firefighters. So I want to really make sure this book is successful. Not for me, it's because it's a giving back initiative. So if I can start building some of the steam behind the firefighting theme again, reminding people that's where Live the Fuel came from, I can use it to build some steam, get that towards the book launch, and we'll see where it goes from there.
Awesome. But again, you're starting with the end in mind. And a year or two before it even launches, you've got your plan in place. And then once you've got your plan in place, you can simply execute. You don't have to think. You don't have to be wishy-washy. You don't have to wonder. You just go. And because of that, and you mentioned action, risky action. What was
you'll appreciate the art behind
imperfect actions.
Dream, plan, do.
I totally noticed that. Yeah.
We're on the Dreamcast. I thought of you when I bought that, by the way. That's actually new. I added that a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Dream, plan, do. I love it. Because then you do. You create you've got your clarity, right? You create your plan and then you take massive action and that's how you create momentum.
Well, let's translate. Dream is your vision, right? It is your end goal, right? Your plan is why I geek out so much about strategy. I love being a strategist. That's my analytical mindset. That's part of my psyche. I'm obsessed with it. And do is my entire brand. I've always been an action taker. So I love little pieces like this where it's just different verbiage, but it's the same thing. I mean, your dream is your vision, right? Yeah. So people need to remind themselves of that. It's okay. Like, have a vision, have a goal. It's not going to end the way that my logo changed probably at least 5 times since I created Live the Fuel until I finally got to this. It was a metamorphosis because it wasn't my top priority. I was focusing on quality content and building a loyal following with good quality content that people respected and appreciated. I was never trying to sell anything. So
is there anything that you've seen, like an entrepreneur comes in or maybe a mistake that they made or something where you'd say, okay, don't do this. If you're a new entrepreneur, stay away from this. Don't do this. Don't make this mistake.
One of my coaches reminded me this a long time ago. I don't work with him anymore because we just grew up beyond where we were at. But I loved his point. It reminded me of this, is that there's 2 types of entrepreneurs or 2 types of business startups. You're building something that's going to be a legacy that you're never going to get rid of, probably never sell, or you're building something to be sold. That's it. There's 2 kinds of businesses. So he's like, what are you building? Your brand, your business, everything else. Are you building something to flip it or sell it or go on the Shark Tank, and get investors that now own half your company? Or are you building something for the long haul? And do you truly have the patience to get it there? Because that's the other thing. Everybody wants everything now. And that kind of summing up this theme I'm going with here for you is that stop rushing perfection. One, there's no such thing as perfection. Okay. We have to take imperfect action. We have to expect imperfect results. You kind of hinted that in my bio. It's the most powerful lessons we learn that create the most exponential shifts in life and in business are the ones that we screw up, right? I mean, there's a quote from Reed, the founder of LinkedIn. And obviously, he's clearly sold that company for a lot of money. But one of his famous quotes is, if you're not embarrassed by your first product, you waited too long. I mean, really think about that. Whether it be your product or your service, if you're not embarrassed by it, you waited too long. Yeah. So sometimes you can rush things, right? Because that's how you're going to learn. Like, you don't know what's going to do until you put it out to the marketplace. And if it does flop, then clearly you know to move on and try something different. Right. But if you never take that action, as you said, then how are you supposed to know?
Well, you can't pivot if you're not moving.
Right.
So I love that, because you can put something out and get feedback and learn and do, ask your people, your community, what do you think? What do you like? What don't you like? What would be better? And you can evolve as you go. But if you never actually get it launched, it doesn't work. So what are you building? Legacy, building to be sold? What type of business is your vision?
Live It Feels a legacy. Come on. Really? Is that a question?
I knew the answer. I did.
The podcast, the books, the social media, I want to leave something powerful behind. And I mean, granted, what if with the book and everything else, because I'm being patient, what if I just become, I don't know, I've gotten, the past year or two, I got more into public speaking now. I wasn't planning on that. It just started happening. Somebody invited me to speak at their event, and then they invited me back again. Then somebody else had me to come to their event. So I've only done a couple of special events a year, but now I'm doing public speaking more. And I actually love it, because it's just like podcasting, only you're in person. And in the end, I'm not selling anything. They just asked me to come up and give back to their audience. So just like I do in podcasting, just like we're doing today for your show, is if I truly believe if you give enough good, you'll get what you deserve in the end. And I think a lot of people just want everything now. Going back to my point earlier, but not being patient with the process, is that, yes, go ahead and put your product and service out there so you can start finding the mistakes and you can learn from them. But as far as your success, you need to be patient with that process. You got to give yourself a long timeline for your vision. Because here's the best part. If you give yourself 5-10 years for that vision, but you do it in 3, bonus,
right?
Because you don't know what's going to happen until you start taking that action.
Now, if you were to talk to your 19-year-old self who was kind of doing things opposite of your family, of your friends, kind of paving your own way, knowing what you know now, what advice or thoughts would you give him?
Well, I will preface that response by saying first that I truly believe we cannot live in the past. Many of us end up pausing and spinning our wheels because we dwell on what has already happened. You can't change what happened. I mean, hey, maybe there is some one day we'll find this time machine thing. But in the end, right now, I'm living in the moment. I'm living for the future. So that's what I would tell myself. I would not change a thing. I would not change. Yes, there's been a lot of struggle over the years, financially, career shifts that I didn't plan for. Again, making myself go to school and then having school debt as an adult. What's up with that? But I truly think I can't change that. I can't. It has to happen as it is. Because a lot of people think, oh, well, so are you happy? And I say, well, how do you define happy? I mean, if you're taking risks and you're learning new things day in and day out, doesn't that make you happy? I don't know. What makes people happy? So if I went back in time and said, I see my 19-year-old self, I'm like, dude, just keep making mistakes, bro. What do you mean? Keep making mistakes, please. Because that's actually going to make me stronger down the road. I need you to keep making more mistakes now. That doesn't mean you go and drink your face off and you get DUIs. I'm not talking about those kind of mistakes, because I did that once. I started sharing that on the podcast a couple of times. I never talked a lot about my background. And I say, I made that mistake one time. And luckily I had a clean record and I went into a program right away and they wiped that out. And I've never made a mistake again, because it's just, life is short and you should not be risking on people's lives. It's a whole different podcast. But my point is, again, transparency. People thought, oh, Scott's the former firefighter and been in the corporate space and I'm like high achiever and I do Spartan races and I skydive and all this crazy stuff. I'm like, yeah, but I still made mistakes. I'm still human. Mm-hmm. You have to make the mistakes. Embrace it.
Yeah. And not seeing it as a stop sign.
No. I call them speed bumps. Or if you ever do Spartan races, it's just another wall you're climbing over. Or when I did it with my fiance and her girlfriends, another wall you're throwing yourself over, because I literally threw them over the wall. Teamwork, man, teamwork.
That's fun. So how did you meet your fiance?
Facebook.
Okay.
I'm not even kidding you.
Social media guru meets his fiance on Facebook.
Well, it was not set up by me. I had moved back, and a mutual friend had noticed I had returned. And my fiance had just become single recently, and she was mutual friends with both of us, but I didn't know Kristen at all. And that girl basically took my profile photo and sent it to her, and then did the same thing to me. And then went and actually hung out with Kristen and said, hey, they did the classic Facebook stalking, because she was already friends with me. So she was able to allow Kristen to go in and like dig into my whole profile. And they saw the firefighting photos and my rock. When I was living in Colorado, I was rock climbing and racing mountain bikes and stuff like that. I was doing all this crazy stuff. And they're like, well, he looks fun. So that helped kick it all off. And our first date was one of my favorite little restaurants where I used to live in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, down in the historic village. We met for a glass of wine. And that's how we, over Facebook Messenger, mind you. And then she was surprised because I actually literally drove to pick her up the next city over, and then, drove her to the date and back again and all this other stuff. She wasn't expecting that either. I'm like, well, she wasn't expecting me to call her. She thought I would just text her. Like, no. Like when I called her to set up the date, she wasn't ready for that. I was so like, funny. That's how much things have changed, man. Yeah, like, okay, I'm the weirdo because I called you.
Yeah. So. Aw. Yeah. Well, that's, it sounds like through the risk and through the vision and through the big, audacious, hairy goals, you continue to say yes to yourself. You continue to say yes to your community, to the people that you love, because you're committed to designing a life that you love, and you're committed to helping other people do the same, kind of find their fuel and live it. So one last question. You have talked a lot about digging into personal development and really getting a PhD in personal development. Mm-hmm. What are some of your favorite books?
Oh God, here's the problem. There's a couple of authors that have a lot of books.
Yes.
So,
okay.
Jim Rohn. I'll just name drop because there's so many books that he's done. Put me on point now. So Jim Rohn, obviously, right? Yeah. And then you got, who else have I got here? Actually, more of a newer influencer for me in the financial space is the author of Profit First, Michael Michalowicz. I've incorporated that into my entire business format. It's my entire back end. It's like he basically flipped the entire accounting world on its head with what he designed. So he's a multi-author, but his best-selling book has been released a second time. It's called Profit First. So Michael Michalowicz, do not try and spell that last name. I'm looking at my library behind me. And who else am I thinking of? Who is the Think and Grow Rich?
Napoleon Hill.
Thank you. Napoleon Hill. Here's the best part. You don't need all these new school cats. Okay. Yeah. They're just recycling and repurposing and reformatting the classic content.
Yeah.
And things like Think and Grow Rich and authors like Jim Rohn. If you just went with Napoleon Hill and Jim Rohn, you're covered for a while.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to The Strangest Secret by Earl Nightingale?
Yes, more recently, actually. I didn't find that into my library. I didn't add it to my library until about a year ago, actually. So it's interesting you brought that up. I wasn't really a big follower of Nightingale stuff for a while. Yeah,
I wasn't either. And it wasn't Jim Rohn who introduced it to me. It was somebody who learned from Jim Rohn, but I forget his name off the top of my head. And he said he listened to The Strangest Secret on Audible every day for 30 days. So I went to listen to it because I do what successful people do. And that's what the 1% do. Some people hear it and ignore it, but I'm like, all right, I have to do it. And I was so shocked when it was from like the 50s.
Yeah.
And
well, honestly, for example, this guy, best-selling book, Secrets of the Millionaire Mind, T. Harv Eker. Yeah. Well, T. Harv Eker learned from Napoleon Hill. Yeah. This is just his own content. And then actually something for the guys out there, and actually I think the ladies should read this too. This was something that helped me with my fiance because part of my other speed bumps was she actually broke up with me for 3 months as we were approaching our first year of dating because my head was so far up my butt from those years of firefighting and not letting vulnerability into my life. I was not allowing her to get close to me. And she's like, sorry, been there, done that, ready to move on, dump my butt. So yeah, Anyway, I want her back.
You learned the hard way one time. And
well, so back to our fuel for the fire, I took all that energy that I was doing for personal development and professional development, and you're going to love this line. And I this question popped in my head, and I said, Scott, you've taken all these risks with your personal life and your professional life, and you've done all this personal and professional development. And the one risk you've never allowed yourself your entire life of your adult life was the risk of the heart. Because I never let somebody get close to me. And I said, all right, well, you never even gave her a shot. So the next 3 months, I went hardcore into romantic personal development. This is one of my books, actually, The Way of the Superior Man by David Dita.
Okay.
And hits a lot of old school best practices that I think some of our newer generation needs to pay attention to. And this is available on Audible. I actually, this is in my Audible library. I listen to this once a quarter. So 4 times a year, I make myself go back and listen to this book again. So
wow.
There's another little hack.
Well, and when you're thinking about all areas of life and taking risks in all areas of life and growing all areas of life to be that Dream 10 life, you and your romantic relationship said, what if it's meant to be? What if I went all in?
For the first time. And that's why I said I could have walked away, but I was like, well, what if I just didn't give her a shot? Like, worst case scenario, she could still say no, but I didn't go after right away. I needed to put in the work. And trust me, I'm still putting in the work. Let's be real. Not 90 days of self-development is not enough, guys. Come on.
Yeah, it's consistent.
And that's why she's happy to remind me about that all the time. So, yeah.
And what are you reading right now?
Ooh, well, I'm the Audible fan. But actually I have a few friends of mine that have released books. So I'm currently an old colleague from my T-Mobile days. This man has been through a lot in the military space. He suffered a lot from depression and other areas affected by mental health. So he wrote a book called Dear Billy, Salvation in the Poconos. And it's literally him writing. Billy was the person who was the caretaker of this property that him and his wife stayed at. So he wrote a book as if he's writing it to Billy, the caretaker, because the experience staying there had left such an impact on him. Mm-hmm. But the book is, I'm still digging through it, but the book is a lot of honesty and transparency into Ben Miller's, the author, Ben's life and the struggles he's been through since serving in the military and the post-traumatic, all that drama, all that mental anguish. Powerful. So I'm proud of him for writing that book. And then the other one was a guy we had on my show too. This is a very light read, but My Happiness Journey by Jeremy Vermeulen. So 8 guiding principles to a happy life. And he is talking about how he made some mistakes with his wife and he wasn't putting his family first, and it's just powerful stuff. So it's interesting how I go from like business books to finance books to still nowadays, I now allow more personal and I think friendship and romantic stories in there to help me, well round my life. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you guys check out livethefuel.com, Live the Fuel podcast for more of Scott's wisdom and inspiration. And I know we're just scratching the surface. So I definitely want to continue to dive in by listening to your show as well. Is there anything that's brewing for you that you want to make sure to mention?
Well, the book's not out yet. I have finished writing it. Now I'm moving into editing. So
okay. Well, last time I talked, you hadn't finished writing it. So good job.
Yes. I'm just shy of 30,000 words. My coach told me to expect more. He's like, when you start editing, you may end up actually creating a whole new chapter or something. So we'll see what happens. But I wanted to keep it a little bit more mid-level and lighter. I don't need to write a dissertation. So I think if anything else, I just want to remind people, it's not about me, right? This is about you guys. And again, my tagline for the show is we fuel your health, your business, your lifestyle. So whichever of those areas in your life you're struggling with, don't hesitate to reach out for help, or at least put in the work to start figuring out if you're struggling in that area after all, because I didn't realize I was struggling on the romantic side. It took a girl to basically show me where I was.
Break it down, break your heart before you start.
And then with all my psychology background from school and everything else, I still had my head up my butt. And I had to realize, wait a minute, Scott, you don't know everything. And maybe you should listen to some people who know more. Like even my closest friends were like, yeah, you kind of screwed that one up.
Do you have a title for your book yet?
Yes, it is the line that I read when I started digging deeper into the hotshot world. I came across that Forest Service website. I forget what crew it was. I haven't found it since, but the line stated, it was written by the superintendent, and it said, "So you want to be a hotshot?" And then he lists every god-awful component of that job description and what we had to do the rest of the page. His point was, don't waste my time. If you're not willing to do all of this, don't even bother. If you read all of this, at the bottom he says, if you read all this and this still entices you, feel free to reach out. So it was just a perfect thing that I never forgot, because I'm that guy. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. That all sounds god awful. Yeah, let's go for it. I'm still willing to say yes. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And so you want to be a hot shot will be out sometime in the next year, and we'll definitely blast our connections when that comes out, because we know that this is going to be something that will take them on a journey. You don't experience something like that and come out the same. You go in and it really does impact you on all sides. And then when I feel like when you come out changed, there's an element of like, everybody needs to know about this. Like, this is such a transformation that so many people will benefit from the experiences that you had. So livethefuel.com, you guys check out Live the Fuel podcast, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the things. And then we'll definitely keep you posted when So You Want to Be a Hot Shot launches. So congratulations, Scott, on everything you've done, and for being a finisher, a risk taker, and the heart that you have along the way just means you're truly impacting everybody that you come in contact with. So congratulations, and we'll definitely be in touch.
Much appreciated.
Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. I want to hear your aha moment from today's amazing episode. If you could leave a review at whatever podcast player you choose to listen from, Apple Podcast, Castbox, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you're listening from, leave a review and share with us your favorite part of today's episode. Thanks for hanging out, and remember to dream big.